Hello everyone, my name's Mr. Powell, and today we're going to be thinking a little bit about choices. Now, on a daily basis, you're required to make choices, and it can be something as simple as what to have for tea, whether it is safe or not to cross a road. There could be choices around the relationships and friendships you form with other people. Or there could be choices around education, which subjects to follow or whether or not to attend university. Now, when it comes to each one of these choices, you are informed as to what is the best choice to make. When it comes to your food, you know what you have to eat for a balanced diet, and you know the benefits of a balanced diet. When it comes to crossing the road, you know the implication of not crossing the road correctly. You know the hurt and damage that can be caused by getting run over by a car. When it comes to the friendships and relationships we form, we know the kinds of people that we want to be around, and we know the kinds of people that are beneficial to us. And every single one of you understands the benefits that an education can bring in your life. However, there is one choice you may be presented with in the coming years that you don't have all the information on, and that may lead to you making a bad choice. And that is the choice of whether or not to use drugs, such as cannabis, alcohol, cocaine, MDMA or ecstasy, or even heroin. Now, we know that these are choices that young people are being presented with, because a study in 2018 found that 24% of pupils in the UK reported having ever taken drugs. That's almost a quarter of pupils. In that same survey, it was found that 17% of pupils said they had taken some sort of drug that year. Now, that is the equivalent of 450 pupils from Rushmead Academy having ever taken drugs and 306 pupils having taken drugs this year. Now, I believe that number is much lower than that, because I know the pupils at Rushmead. However, there must be some pupils that either are being presented with that choice or may be presented with that choice in the coming years. And we have to consider what we can do to help pupils make positive choices. I think it's also worth noting that in 2018 there were 4,359 deaths linked to either drug poisoning or drug overdose. Now, at some point, each one of those people would have been pupils at school presented with these choices. And for those 4,359 people, we have to ask ourselves, did they make good choices? Did they have the information needed to choose correctly as to whether or not to use drugs? Now, that leads us to the question, what would the best choice be regarding drug use? Well, that's simple. Don't take drugs. They are damaging to your body. They can affect your health in lots and lots of different ways. They are illegal, which can lead to you receiving a criminal record, which can affect future employment. And in long-term use, they can lead to addiction and all the problems that come with that. Joblessness, lack of motivation, and in the worst case scenarios, death. However, we do know that there are pupils who come into contact with drugs. So, as I've said before, we need to consider how can we help them make the best choices when it comes to deciding whether or not to use drugs. And I think it comes down to three things: information, understanding the impact on your life, and harm reduction or prevention. So we're going to look at some substances now, considering those three things, to try and help you make better choices when it comes to drug use. So firstly, alcohol. Alcohol is the most common drug used in the UK. In 2018, 44% of pupils admitted to having ever drunk alcohol. It is a physically addictive substance, just like heroin, making alcohol incredibly dangerous, and in long-term use, it can be as dangerous as heroin. And as you drink, your liver tries to break down alcohol at an average rate of 1 unit per hour. So if you drink alcohol quicker than your liver can break it down, that is what results in you getting drunk. In terms of the legality, alcohol is illegal for someone under the age of 18 to purchase, and in many areas it is illegal to drink in public. So, for example, down New Walk, there is a street drinking ban. If you get caught with alcohol on there, you're either going to face a fine or you're going to be arrested. So in terms of harm reduction, if you do decide to drink alcohol, then try to stick to these steps to help reduce the amount of harm that you can cause yourself. So firstly, alcohol affects your decision-making abilities, so avoid any serious decisions when drunk. Anything that you decide to do that could possibly cause harm, you're going to be impaired when it comes to that decision. So avoid walking around late at night, for example. Never get in a car with someone that's been drinking. Never allow someone that's been drinking to drive. If you are going to drink alcohol, then take your time. Don't glug alcohol down really, really quickly, because that will just lead to getting really, really drunk really, really fast, and all of those problems can happen to you then. Avoid strong alcohol such as whiskey, vodka, and gin. Never let the bottle or glass that you're drinking from out of your sight. There is a problem with spiking, and this happens at parties as well as in nightclubs and bars and pubs, where people will try and slip substances into your drink. You can get these little stoppers if you are concerned that prevent anyone from putting substances into your drink. And then finally, do not take medication if you're drinking alcohol. There is a serious issue if you're drinking alcohol on top of taking antibiotics. It can lead to some really, really horrible reactions. So next, cannabis. Now, cannabis is the most common illegal drug used in the UK. It is something that is usually mixed with tobacco, and with that there are all of the issues that come with smoking tobacco, increased risk of lung cancer, increased risk of bronchitis, all of the kind of horrible yucky stuff that you get inside your lungs. It can be smoked in joints, bongs, or vaporizers, and 30% of all people in the UK admit to having taken cannabis. So, this shows that it is the most common illegal drug that can be used. Cannabis contains two substances that are active, THC and CBD, both of which are cannabinoids. THC is the chemical responsible for the high within cannabis, and if you were to smoke cannabis that have strong doses of THC within them, it can cause extreme paranoia and other kind of impairments to your mental function. One thing to note is that cannabis has been getting stronger, and we're seeing higher amounts of THC within cannabis. So the stuff that you'll be buying on the street today is very, very different to the stuff that would have been on the streets sort of 20, 30 years ago. And as I've said before, it's that amount of THC which can cause real problems. The legality of cannabis is that it is a Class B substance. If you're found in possession of cannabis for personal use, then you will most likely receive a street caution, but if you have multiple street cautions and multiple offences, it can lead up to a 5-year prison sentence. Now, in terms of possession with intent to supply, and bear in mind that that is at the discretion of the police officer arresting you as to whether he considers the amount that you have on you is intent to supply, you can get up to 14 years in prison. Okay, so in terms of harm reduction, if when smoking cannabis you have an existing mental health issue or a learning disability, then cannabis will make those things worse. If you smoke cannabis and you have ADHD, or you have an autistic spectrum disorder, if you suffer from anxiety or depression or any other kind of mental distress, then cannabis will make that worse, so avoid it at all costs. Mixing cannabis with tobacco, as I've said before, has all of the same issues that smoking tobacco has. Cannabis is a psychologically addictive substance, so try to limit the frequency and the amount smoked, because if you end up relying on cannabis, then it'll be something that you end up having to do every day, just as you would with a physical addiction. And cannabis, in the same way that alcohol can result in impaired mental functioning, particularly if started young. So if you smoke cannabis for many, many years, then that will lead to some long-term impairment of your mental function. Finally, cannabis can impact your motivation, leading to you missing deadlines, generally having a poorer performance in work and in school, and just generally feeling apathetic about life. So if any of those things are problems to you, then I would seriously suggest you avoid smoking cannabis. So moving on to ecstasy or MDMA. Now, MDMA is the powdered crystal that you see in that image at the top. Ecstasy are tablets that are formed from that crystal powder. Now, ecstasy or MDMA is a psychoactive drug that has the effect of both a stimulant and a psychedelic. It creates a sense of euphoria and limitless energy in the user. However, this can also manifest as extreme paranoia. It can make you incredibly paranoid. MDMA usually comes in the form of powder, whereas ecstasy comes in the form of pills. Now, both of those things come with additional risks that we'll explore in a moment. The legality of ecstasy or MDMA is that it is a Class A substance, so possession will get you up to 7 years in prison. I don't think you'll be getting street cautions if you're caught with ecstasy or MDMA. And possession with intent to supply is up to life in prison. Remembering again that is at the discretion of the arresting police officer. If he feels that what you're doing is supplying MDMA or ecstasy, then he may arrest you for possession with intent to supply. Now, in terms of harm reduction, ecstasy or MDMA is a stimulant. It will raise your body temperature, which puts you at severe risk of dehydration. So if you do choose this, then make sure you always have water with you. You are always able to drink. It is something that increases inattention, usually manifesting as hand or jaw clenching. So much so that there are reports of people that have chewed holes in their lips and cheeks because they have this tension in their jaw so much. They say that it is helpful to use chewing gum. Now, this is the biggest problem with ecstasy and MDMA. It can be easily cut with other substances. And there have been reports recently of this substance, PMA, which is an inexpensive, legal high. It used to be legal. It's a synthetic stimulant that is very dangerous and often used in ecstasy. Now, the danger that comes with PMA is it is much stronger, but it takes a lot longer to kick in. So there are reports of users that take a tablet, don't feel like anything is happening, take another tablet, again, don't feel like anything's happening, take another tablet, and then when it all kicks in, that is when they find themselves in real dangerous situations. Ecstasy and MDMA can cause issues with your heart if mixed with depressants. These are stimulants, so if you mix a stimulant with a depressant, it can confuse your heart so that it should be beating fast or slow, and in some cases can result in your heart stopping. So never mix substances. And finally, when ecstasy and MDMA has worn off, you're in a state of something called serotonin depletion. The way that MDMA works is it causes serotonin to flow freely along receptors within your brain, which is what causes the high. Once the drug has worn off, then your body experiences serotonin depletion. This is commonly known as a come down, in which you will experience severe depression. Again, if you have mental health problems such as anxiety or depression, then I would seriously give this a miss. Next, we move on to cocaine. Now, cocaine is a stimulant and anesthetic that can be snorted or smoked as crack cocaine. It is a highly addictive substance and one of the biggest contributors to drug death in the UK, contributing to 637 deaths in 2018. It originates from South American countries such as Colombia, and within that supply chain, there is a huge amount of exploitation, from the farmers that grow the coca plants that cocaine is then derived from, through to the drugs mules who smuggle it out of the country, the drugs mules that smuggle it into this country. There is exploitation at every single level. And this is a drug that is controlled by cartels that are responsible for the murders of thousands of people. So if you do buy cocaine, then you must understand that that substance has blood on it. The legality, again, cocaine is a Class A substance, so possession is up to 7 years, and possession with intent to supply is up to life in prison. And in terms of harm reduction, cocaine can cause serious damage to your septum as well as your throat and your mouth. It can cause parts to rot. There are some people that have issues with the septum, which is the bit of bone in between your nostrils that can actually fall out in very, very long-term drug use. As a stimulant, it can cause heart problems such as angina and heart attacks, again in long-term use. As such, avoid using cocaine if you have any respiratory or pulmonary health issues. If you have problems with your breathing, if you have problems with your heart, then avoid using cocaine because it's only going to make those problems worse. Snorting cocaine presents its own issues. Many diseases can be spread when sharing snorting tubes, so do not share those tubes because quite often there will be bleeding associated with snorting cocaine, and again, blood on blood can result in the passing on of bloodborne viruses. Similarly to MDMA and ecstasy, cocaine can easily be cut with various substances and is cut on a very regular basis because it is so expensive. Substances used to cut it are chalk dust, paracetamol, laxative, glass, and rat poison. Drug dealers really do not care what they cut their substances with as long as they are making more money. Crack cocaine, which is the derivative of cocaine, is even more addictive than regular cocaine, and extensive use can result in a number of serious health issues and exacerbate the health issues that would be caused by just using standard cocaine. Finally then, we need to look at what are the most dangerous and damaging drugs, heroin or opiates. Now, opiates are sedatives that affect the nervous system, including the respiratory system. One of the main issues with heroin and heroin overdose is that it shuts down your lungs and stops you from breathing. It can be snorted, smoked or injected. Each comes with very high risks. Of the 2,917 drug deaths reported in 2019, 1,336 involved opiates. That's 45% of all drug deaths in this country involved opiates. That hopefully shows you how dangerous these drugs really are. Alongside heroin, There are a number of prescription medicines that contain opiates which have similar effects and carry similar risks. These are substances such as codeine and tramadol. Opiates are extremely addictive. It doesn't take long for you to become dependent on opiates. And if you are dependent on opiates, then detoxing would lead you to feeling extreme physical symptoms such as sweats, vomiting, hallucinations, shakes, convulsions, seizures, all of these kinds of things. These are incredibly dangerous drugs. The legality of heroin, again, is a Class A substance. Possession will lead you to having 7 years in prison. Possession with intent to supply is up to life in prison. Now, in terms of harm reduction, I think it's important to understand that opioids are some of the most dangerous drugs you may come across. You can overdose only a very small amount, and there are many other contributing factors that can affect overdose, such as mood, environment, other substances within your system. It's really very easy to die when taking heroin. If you did overdose, then what happens is your lungs slowly shut down until you can no longer breathe, and you eventually suffocate to death. Injecting heroin can lead to very bad abscesses, which are infections, and in the worst case can lead to gangrene and amputation. And sharing needles can lead to any blood-borne viruses being passed on, such as hepatitis and HIV. So, again, another massive concern when talking about heroin or opiate use. Like other powdered drugs, heroin can easily be cut with other chemicals, and if people are injecting this drug, then they are not filtered out by the liver, which filters out impurities and toxins in other substances. So that can have, again, a devastating effect on you and your life. So hopefully from this you can see that choosing drugs is always going to have some kind of negative impact on your life. But please remember, when making choices about substance use, you need to understand the effect that it will have on you. You need to have that in your mind clearly. And this isn't just the effect the drug will have on you in the short term, it's the effect that it can have on your decision making. It's the effect that it will have in terms of if you get caught with that substance, how that may damage the rest of your life. The effect that that drug will have on those around you. Will this drug make you a liability to the people that you are around? Will it make you erratic and unpredictable? Will it cause them to have concerns about you? And then finally, the effect that it will have or has already had on wider society. This is the idea that drugs are always linked with crime, and with crime come wider social problems. So I hope that you guys make good choices in the future and that you found some of that useful, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye bye.